So this is a DCP demo. We'll first start off with looking at the contents of the DCP, and also know that the DCP can be created only in the Studio version of DaVinci Resolve. The Studio version is installed upstairs in CCB 229 on stations 1 and 2, and also in CCB 126 on the first 8 stations in the front of the room, along with the teacher station. So there are 9 installs in that room. And you can work in there on the weekends and when class is not in session. There is a sheet that shows the scheduling of classes in that room on the door. So basically the media files that I've provided are the 3 standard types of 4K: scope, 4K DCI, and 4K UHD. We'll focus today on UHD 4K, which is the 16:9 185 aspect ratio, or the DCI 4K full. I don't think anyone in the class is doing scope, but you can also create a timeline with scope. So let's start with the UHD 4K. We're going to create a new timeline. Right-click on the clip itself and say Create New Timeline. Deselect Use Project Settings so that you can create your own format here. And for UHD 4K, what we're going to do is something called flat, which is 185. So this is the selection. You also will be going into 24 frames per second. That is the standard for DCP output. And generally, you can go here to use selected media for your audio track. It does give you the option to pull down for 5.1 surround sound, stereo, mono, 7.1, or various other ones. I think based on selected media will work in this case, so we'll say Create. And that has created a timeline which I will now label 4K UHD, and I'll call it 4K UHD timeline. It's also helpful at this stage to save the project. So what you want to do is to save the project, to give the project a name, and we'll call it DCP 460 Workshop. I'm going to right-click on my scope and create a new timeline using the selected clip. Deselect Use Project Settings, Format, bring this down to 4K scope, and we're going to switch this to 24 frames per second. We're leaving the general, we'll leave the audio based on selected media, and create. Let's label this 4K scope timeline. Now we'll make the 4K DCI timeline. Again, using selected clip, we will select this, come in here, deselect Use Project Settings, come down here to 4K DCI and select, change this to 24 frames per second, and create. Let's label our timeline 4K DCI timeline. Let's start with the UHD 4K timeline, and we will create our DCP. You can see this is a very short video. It has nice vibrant color. One thing that you will notice is that the video itself is not quite fitting out to the edge, so you could scale it up just a little bit so that it doesn't have pillar boxing. Depending on how tightly you have filmed your image, there will be some pillar boxing in Charlene Gordon Theater for UHD 4K because the screen is 1.9 and this is 185. Next, we will go to the Deliver pane. In here, we will select Custom. Give it a name. We're going to call this Praying Mantis, all one word. Location, let's browse to the location where we're going to export it. I'm going into my DR exports, DaVinci Resolve exports. We want to render this as a single clip. We want this to be DCI, Kadoko, and come into 4K DCI flat. We don't want the interlock packaging. 250. 250 is the maximum bit rate. We'll scale that back. This should be pulled down to short, and we're going to now go to the composition settings. So we want to give the composition a name, which we will call Praying Mantis, all one word. Then when we click the edit button is where it gets interesting. So here we have used the composition settings. We're going to call this a 2D movie. It's not 3D. You can say that it's temporary, which means that it's a rough cut or sometimes trailer. Mastered luminance, the frame rate is 24. There's no Dolby Vision or Eclair color. Custom modifiers, here we have Flat, we're going to use the encoded aspect ratio. The language is English, so we will go down to English. This is your option for closed captions or open captions. We have none. The territory we could leave as none, or we could say that it's from the US. United States is the territory. Rating we cannot put unless it's actually been rated. And so, like, you cannot rate it unless there's been a rating board rated. It's not legal. Audio type, we're going to say stereo. It's not high or any of these other types of support systems. Custom modifiers, non-resolution. Use the actual width and height. Studio, there's none. Date, let's include the date in the title. Facility, none. Standard, we're going to say SMPTE timecode. Package is OV, which means that it has all original material. And so this is going to be sort of the way the title is created. So we're going to say OK. Now we're ready to export. Add this to the render queue. Add anyway, it's looking for 5-point surround sound. And when we say render all, it's rendering. Notice the color drops out just while it's rendering, but that's not the way it's going to look on the screen. Once it's completed, you'll see the way it looks. It returns back to the beautiful color grade that you applied. Next, we can return back to do another one of these DCPs. Let's try the full 4K DCI version. And again, we will then set up our settings. We will move to deliver, custom. Let's name this Woman at Night. Tell it where you want it to go. It's a single clip, not individual clips. For the format, you need to select DCI. Interop packaging should be deselected. For editing, let's change this to Woman at Night. Use current date. This should be pulled down to short, and it's a single reel. We want to edit here, and it says it's a short composition, so we're going to keep it at 24 frames per second. There will be nothing else checked in this box. Temp. That is a rough cut. Use encode, English language. Subtitles, none. You don't have any open or closed captioning. The territory is the US. No rating. We've got stereo. No other selectors there. Use the actual width and height. There's no studios associated with this. Include the date and time. And SMPTE timecode, and OV means it's your original material. And OK. Now this is ready to be sent to the render queue. So we will add this to the render queue. Add anyway. It's not 5-point surround sound. It's looking for that. And render. Let's return to the media pane, and we will complete the exercise by creating a 4K scope. This helps us to understand the difference between these. And we will go to the deliver pane. Again, it's custom export. We can call this one fishing. I'm going to call it fishing v2 because I have a fishing there. And for this, you notice that the DCP has different. The codec is Kakadu, JPEG 2000. The type, we're going to say 4K DCI scope. And we will change this to fishing. Use current timeline. Well, I'm going to just put fishing. Yeah, I'll put v2. Single reel. And then we want to go into our edit pane here. It's pretty much the same thing. We're going to have, it automatically is showing scope, which we included. This is defaulting to our prior settings. English, no subtitles. You could add them if you have closed captions. The territory US. No rating. Stereo. The actual width and height. Date included. Facility. SMPTE timecode, SMPTE standards, and OV, and say OK. Now what we'll do is export this by adding it to the render queue, add anyway. Again, the color will come off while we're rendering it, and it looks very flat, not to be concerned. quit DaVinci Resolve. I will double check to see what my media looks like inside of my export folder. These are the contents. You have all these. It's a package consisting of all of this. It's not like a regular QuickTime movie. This is what's being sent to the movie theater to go on the server for digital cinema projection. You may have to do this for film festivals. Certainly GIFF required this, also Black Box and the Senior Thesis Showcase.